Fletcher has spent 5 years haunted by the day his daughter, Delia, and grandson vanished from a crowded beach in the Florida Keys. The police treated it as a likely parental abduction, suggesting Delia had fled with her son to escape a difficult past. But Fletcher knew his daughter would never leave without a word. His hope had all but withered until a group of fishermen report a strange discovery: a small, empty boat drifting in the Gulf Stream. On board, investigators find just one item: Delia's distinctive pink Beach Mama towel, tied around a waterproof box containing a child's drawings and a single, weathered photograph of a man Fletcher has never seen. It's incredible how a single discovery can change everything in a moment. Before you listen to Fletcher's story, take a second to hit that subscribe button, because you won't want to miss the mysteries we uncover each week. The salt spray of the Florida Keys had once been a comfort to Fletcher. Now, it was a constant, bitter reminder of the day the sea had seemingly swallowed his family whole. For 5 years, he'd lived in a haze of unanswered questions. He'd retired from his job as a private investigator a year before it happened, looking forward to quiet days fishing with his grandson, Rowan. Instead, his investigative skills had rusted over, unused, because the one case that mattered most had no leads, no clues, and no answers. The police had closed the file years ago. Delia, a single mother with a troubled ex-partner in her distant past, fit their profile for a runner. They figured she'd packed up, taken her son, and started a new life, leaving everyone and everything behind. But they didn't know Delia. Fletcher did. She was a fighter, yes, but she wasn't secretive. She would never have put him through this torment willingly. The call from Detective Martinez was a jolt to his system. It wasn't the call he'd always hoped for. The one saying Delia had been found, safe and sound. It was something stranger. A ghost boat, Martinez called it. A small 20-foot center console, found bobbing aimlessly in the Gulf Stream by a charter fishing crew. The registration numbers were filed off, the engine was dead, but something inside had prompted the Coast Guard to call the local police. Fletcher met Martinez at the impound lot, the air thick with the smell of gasoline and sun-baked fiberglass. The boat was unremarkable, just another vessel that had seen better days. But inside, on the deck, was the item that had triggered the call. The pink towel was faded from the sun and stiff with salt, but it was unmistakably Delia's. He'd given it to her as a joke for her first Mother's Day. Seeing it tied around a black, waterproof case sent a chill through him that had nothing to do with the morning breeze. A forensics tech, a young woman with careful hands, opened the box. Inside, protected from the elements, were a dozen or so crayon drawings. Fletcher recognized Rowan's clumsy, colorful style immediately. There were pictures of boats, fish, and a smiling woman with bright yellow hair. Delia. Beneath the drawings was the photograph. It was a cheap Polaroid, the colors washed out by time. It showed a man, maybe in his late 50s, with a weathered face, a thick gray beard, and eyes that seemed to hold the deep, calm wisdom of the ocean itself. He stood on a wooden dock, a dense tangle of mangrove trees behind him. He wasn't smiling, but he didn't look threatening either. Fletcher had never seen him before in his life. "This changes things," Martinez said, his voice low. "A staged scene like this. It's not random." Fletcher just nodded, his mind already racing. For the first time in 5 years, the rust began to fall away from his old instincts. He had a face. It wasn't much, but it was a start. He had a new goal, a singular focus that pushed the grief into a corner. Find the man in the picture, and you'll find what happened to Delia and Rowan. Back in his small bungalow, surrounded by maps and old case files, Fletcher began his own investigation. He pinned the photograph to a corkboard, the stranger's calm gaze now a constant presence in the room. He scanned the image with a magnifying glass, a relic from his PI days. The man's clothing was simple: a worn, collarless shirt and canvas pants. Practical, not flashy. The dock he stood on was old, the wood bleached gray by the sun. But it was the background that held the most promise, the dense, almost impenetrable wall of mangroves. That specific type of ecosystem was common in the Keys, but the particular formation suggested a more remote, less trafficked waterway. Not the kind of place you'd find behind a tourist resort. His first calls were to old contacts, men he'd worked with or against during his career. Most were retired like him, their voices raspy with age, but their memories were still sharp. He described the man, the boat, the location. The responses were all the same. It could be anywhere, anyone. The Keys were full of recluses, people who lived off the grid, wanting to be left alone. The official police investigation was moving at a crawl. They were running facial recognition on the photo with no hits. They were treating the boat as a crime scene, but it had been wiped clean, baked by the sun and washed by the salt, leaving no usable prints or DNA. Fletcher knew he couldn't wait for them. This was his hunt. He decided to start at the fringes, the places tourists didn't go. He took a high-quality copy of the photo and began visiting the ramshackle bait shops and salty waterfront bars that dotted the lesser-known islands. For days, he was met with shrugs and suspicious stares. The tight-knit communities of the outer islands were wary of outsiders asking questions. They protected their own. Fletcher changed his approach. He stopped showing the picture and just started listening. He'd buy a beer, talk about fishing, and mention the strange ghost boat that had been found. He spun a story about being a writer, looking for local legends. It was a lie, but it was a gentler one, and it worked. In a dusty bar on a speck of an island called Cudjoe Key, an old fisherman with hands like leather finally gave him something. Fletcher was talking about the boat, and the old man, whose name was Cal, grunted. "Sounds like something Silas would do," he mumbled into his drink. Fletcher's senses went on high alert, but he kept his voice casual. "Silas?" Cal looked at him, his eyes narrowed. "You ain't from around here. Silas ain't someone you just go looking for. He runs the ferry out to the Cays, the Forgotten Islands, places folks go when they don't want to be found." The fisherman explained that Silas was a man of few words who had lived in the Keys his whole life. He ferried supplies and the occasional person to the small off-grid communities on islands that weren't even on most modern maps. He kept to himself and minded his own business. The description was a long shot, but it was the only shot Fletcher had. Finding Silas wasn't easy. He didn't have a phone number or a business address. His ferry was an old, sturdy-looking boat that he operated out of a hidden cove, and his schedule was based on the tides and the needs of his few clients. Fletcher spent 2 days watching the cove from a distance, hidden in the mangroves. On the third morning, he saw him. An older boat, just as Cal had described, chugged into the cove, and a man matching the photograph stepped onto the rickety dock. It was him. Fletcher's heart hammered against his ribs. He felt a surge of adrenaline mixed with a cold dread. Was this the man who had taken his daughter? He waited until Silas had unloaded some crates, Then he walked out into the open. Silas saw him immediately, his body tensing, his hand moving subtly toward a large knife sheathed at his belt. Fletcher held up his hands to show he was unarmed. "Silas?" he called out, his voice steady. The man just stared, his expression unreadable. "My name is Fletcher," he said, taking a few slow steps forward. "I'm not police. I just need to ask you about my daughter, Delia." At the mention of Delia's name, a flicker of something crossed Silas's face. It wasn't guilt or fear. It was something closer to recognition, and maybe, just maybe, sadness. The discovery of the man's identity was a major break, but the man's reaction was not what Fletcher had expected. It wasn't the reaction of a kidnapper. This twist in the story proved that the official police theory was wrong. The situation was not a simple tragedy, but a conspiracy that was far more complex and dangerous than Fletcher could have ever imagined. Fletcher approached the dock slowly, his old PI instincts telling him to read the situation before pushing too hard. Silas didn't move, his hand still resting near the handle of his knife. He watched Fletcher with an unnerving stillness, like a heron waiting for a fish. The silence stretched, broken only by the gentle lapping of water against the pilings. "The police found a boat," Fletcher said, his voice calm. "An empty one, set adrift. Inside they found a towel that belonged to my daughter, and this." He pulled the copy of the photograph from his pocket and held it out. Silas's eyes flickered down to the image, then back up to Fletcher's face. For the first time the man spoke, his voice a low rumble like stones shifting on the seabed. "You should have left it be." It wasn't a threat, but a statement of fact, heavy with a weariness that seemed to go bone deep. Fletcher took another step, placing the photo on a weathered crate between them. "I can't," he said simply. "She's my daughter. Her boy, Rowan, he's my grandson. For 5 years, I've had nothing. Now I have this picture. I have you. You have to tell me what happened." Silas stared at him for a long moment, his gaze searching Fletcher's face. Whatever he saw there seemed to convince him. With a deep sigh, he pulled his hand away from his knife and gestured toward his boat. "Get on," he said. "This is not a story for a doc." The journey was silent. Silas navigated the labyrinth of mangrove channels with an expert hand, the boat engine thrumming a steady rhythm. They left the more familiar parts of the Keys behind, venturing into a wild, untamed world of water and sky. Fletcher didn't know where they were going, but he knew he was closer to the truth than he had been in half a decade. After nearly an hour, the boat slowed as they approached a small island, barely visible from the main channel, shielded by a dense curtain of trees. A narrow opening in the mangroves led to a hidden lagoon, where a small community of stilt houses stood over the calm, turquoise water. It was a place that time had forgotten, a cluster of simple, self-sufficient homes connected by wooden walkways. There were no roads, no power lines, just the sun and the sea. Silas cut the engine, and the boat glided toward a small dock. A woman came out of one of the nearest houses, her face shaded by a wide-brimmed hat. She watched them approach with curiosity, but not alarm. Silas tied up the boat and finally turned to Fletcher. "I didn't take your daughter," he said, his voice low and serious. "I rescued her." The words hung in the air, shifting Fletcher's entire understanding of the past 5 years. Silas went on to explain, his words chosen carefully. He told Fletcher about Delia's ex-partner, a man from her past named Marcus. Fletcher knew of him, of course. He was the reason Delia had moved to the Keys in the first place, to put an ocean between them. He was charming on the surface, but underneath he was possessive and violent. Delia had thought she had escaped him for good. He found her, Silas said, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Showed up one day, right on the beach where she and the boy were playing. He'd gotten out of prison early. He wasn't threatening her, not out loud, but she saw the look in his eyes. She knew he wouldn't let her go again. Delia had panicked. She knew Marcus was obsessive, that a restraining order was just a piece of paper to him. She didn't trust that the police could protect her. She'd seen an article once about the off-grid communities in the Keys, and in desperation, she sought out the one man who could get her there, Silas. She came to me that night, Silas continued, terrified. She said she needed to disappear, truly disappear, in a way that would make him stop looking. We came up with the plan together. The ghost boat was Delia's idea. She wanted to create a mystery so convincing that everyone, especially Marcus, would believe she and Rowan were gone forever, likely victims of a tragic accident at sea. She bought the old boat with cash. She put the towel, the drawings, and the box inside. The photograph, however, was Silas's idea. It was a risk, he admitted. But she was leaving you behind, too. I wanted there to be a breadcrumb, a thread of hope that one day, if it was safe, you might be able to find. I never thought it would take 5 years. He explained how he had taken Delia and Rowan to this hidden community, a place where people looked out for one another, a place where Marcus would never find them. The community had welcomed them, given them a home, and protected their secret. Fletcher sat on the edge of the boat, the world spinning around him. His daughter wasn't a victim of a random crime. She was a survivor who had taken a desperate, calculated risk to protect her child. He felt a wave of pride so fierce it almost brought him to his knees, followed by the deep, aching sorrow of the years he had lost. Are they here?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Silas nodded toward one of the houses, a simple structure painted the color of the evening sky. "She's seen the boat. She's waiting." He led Fletcher down the dock and along a wooden walkway. His heart pounded with every step. The door to the house opened before they reached it. A woman stood in the doorway, older now, her face etched with the sun and the worries of the past 5 years. But it was her. It was Delia. Her eyes filled with tears as she saw him. "Dad?" she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Fletcher closed the distance between them in 3 long strides and wrapped his arms around her, holding on as if he might lose her all over again. A small boy with Delia's eyes and Fletcher's stubborn chin peeked out from behind her legs. He looked at Fletcher with a shy curiosity. "Rowan," Fletcher breathed, his voice thick. "Look at you. You've gotten so big," Delia cried, and Fletcher held her tighter. All the anger, the confusion, the years of helpless grief, it all melted away in that moment, leaving only a profound, overwhelming sense of relief. That evening, sitting on the porch of Delia's small stilt house, they talked. Delia told him everything about her life in the hidden community. It was simple, but it was safe. Rowan was happy, healthy, and loved by everyone. She had found peace here, a peace she had never known when she was constantly looking over her shoulder. But Fletcher's arrival brought with it a new, complicated reality. He was faced with an impossible choice. He could try to convince Delia and Rowan to return to the world with him, but that would mean exposing their location. Marcus was still out there somewhere. Even if they went to the police, there was no guarantee of safety, and it would destroy the peaceful life she had built. Or he could leave them here, protected by the isolation and the loyalty of the community, and return to his own empty life, holding their secret. He would know they were safe, but he would have to lose them all over again. Holding his grandson's hand, watching him draw a picture of a boat with a tattered pink sail, Fletcher knew what he had to do. His long hunt was over, not with a dramatic capture or a headline-grabbing trial, but with a quiet, heart-breaking decision. He would protect their peace. He would become part of the conspiracy, a keeper of the secret. He spent 2 more days on the island, soaking in every moment. He went fishing with Rowan. He helped Delia patch a fishing net. He listened to Silas's stories of the sea. They were precious, stolen moments, a lifetime of missed memories squeezed into a few short hours. When the time came to leave, the goodbye was the hardest thing he had ever done. He hugged Rowan tightly, promising to visit when he could. He held Delia's hands, looking into her eyes. "You did the right thing," he told her, and he meant it. "You're a good mother." As Silas's boat pulled away from the lagoon, Fletcher watched until the island was just a green smudge on the horizon. He was returning to a world that still thought his daughter was missing, presumed dead. He would have to lie to Detective Martinez, tell him the lead went cold. He would have to carry the weight of this secret alone. But as the boat cut through the open water, Fletcher didn't feel loss. He felt a quiet, profound peace. The mystery was solved. His daughter was alive. His grandson was safe. And sometimes that's a better ending than justice. What would you have done in Fletcher's position? Would you have kept the secret to protect your family's hard-won peace, or would you have brought them back to face the risks of the outside world for the chance to be together? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story gave you something to think about, please consider sharing it with someone who appreciates a story with a difficult choice at its heart. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next mystery.